Morning. As you can see, we've got the sedan back, and that can only mean one thing, and that is that it's build day. Roll the intro. Right, so as you've seen, Sedan is back. I'm not going to spend too much time talking about the paintwork because, to be honest, it's not finished. It still needs wet flatten and polishing, and yeah. So today, the main aim is to get the engine back in and get everything running again. So as you can see, yes, she's very shiny. There are a few imperfections in her, and that's where the wet flatten and polishing is going to come into play. But it makes more sense to get engine in, running, rather than working around fresh paintwork, which has only just been polished. Because this way, if I make any boo-boos on the bodywork, or if I'm leaving oily handprints, etc., this will all be cleaned off again later. So just to make it clear, this isn't going to be an in-depth video. I'm really up against the clock. I've technically got 4 weekends left until my first car show, and I lose 2 of those weekends because I have my daughter I have to look after as well. So really up against the clock, as you can tell. So today is mainly going to be about getting that in the hole, getting that running. Potentially still got a couple of bits to weld up. I've got the intercooler in her, which has got to be fitted into that. And then I've got slam panel to go on. I've got wings which are freshly painted to go on, which need to be on for the cutting process tomorrow. And various other little niggles. So yeah, we really haven't got time to film too much today. And I just need to be cracking on with this. So I think it makes sense. The first thing I'm going to do is swing that engine in. I'll set you up on a time lapse and you can watch me fuck it up somehow. Right, that's the engine now sort of teetering in. So I've got this top engine mount loosely on. Clearances are quite bloody tight. So I've made a little bit of a mistake. I didn't want to dink the new alley sump, so I ended up putting a tyre underneath the sump. Now I can't drop the engine down quite low enough. So there's a little bit of fidgeting still to go on here before we get this gearbox mount back roughly where it should be. But we're getting there, so I'll continue sort of finessing it into the hole and see where we end up. So as you can see, the engine's now in. I did struggle by putting the tyre underneath. I was trying to protect that sump because these sumps are quite brittle and they're hard to get hold of. But it ended up biting me in the ass because I couldn't lower the gearbox side down enough to get the mount on. So jacked the car up, whipped the tyre out, engine's in, and it's in lovely. Now, my biggest fear, obviously I mocked all this induction, all this new boost piping up and turbo in the phase 2-3 engine bay, and I didn't know if it would transfer into the phase 1 nicely. So, the 3 bits I was concerned about for clearance, the inlet manifold. So that is on 20mm spacers and it pushes it towards the bulkhead. The idea behind that was to try and get a true 2.5-inch induction in. Next, what I was worried about the clearance on is the 2.5-inch induction around that master cylinder up there. And then finally was this little 2-inch boost pipe which comes off the back of the turbo and round, and I was worried about the clearance on that on the bulkhead. Now if we remember, on the phase 2-3 it was extremely tight against the bulkhead. So I've just quickly changed my zoom levels and we'll now have a look at the clearances. So starting off with the induction pipe, as you can see, 2.5-inch induction. There is just room for days around everything. I think maybe I really overkilled this by trimming it into the cam belt cover and hugging it really tight into the engine. but at the same time it's nice to have that level of clearance around everything. So next was my concerns on this inlet manifold. So again, looking at that, it would be close to the master cylinder, and again you can see I can get my hand back there, you can just about see it. Try and tuck the camera down and you can see just here how much clearance we've got. And then finally, this 2-inch boost pipe. Now, if we remember, and I don't know if I can drop a photo in here somewhere now. If not, you've just hung around pointlessly for a couple of seconds. But if we remember, this pipe here was very, very tight on the bulkhead of the phase 2-3. So that was my biggest fear, is that we would be sat on this supporting ridge on the back of the bulkhead. So now going in to have a look, and lo and behold, we've got all that room, all that clearance. That's actually ridiculous. I genuinely did not think I would have clearance like that. So this confirms that either between phase 1 and phase 2-3 there is quite large bulkhead differences, meaning that you actually get a little bit more room in a true phase 1, or the other side of it is the engine mounts, what are actually in her, what are used for mocking and everything, are pretty damn worn out. So I'm not 100% sure which one it is. It's kind of interesting though, because obviously I've got the 4-branch manifold, what I made up for the estate, and that either means that if those engine mounts are worn out, I'll have more clearance on the bulkhead for that, or there's something else slightly astray with the phase 2-3, or it could just be the fact that they don't actually compare shell wise, apart from being able to bolt the front end on. So yes, the engine's now bolted in. Now I've got to start working through all the auxiliaries and getting all the boost pipes and stuff like that sorted out. So I've got to get the radiator back in a minute. I then need to try and work out whereabouts I've got to drill this lower panel along here to get the front mount intercooler in, and then I've got to get it in. So again, how it used to sit on the phase 2-3, it practically kisses the front bumper. So front bumper's just been resprayed. I don't particularly want it kissing that one. So what I'm going to do, I'll mock it all in and everything, see what room I've got, and then I'll actually use the old bumper off the estate to mock it all into place and just make sure I've got the clearance I want. I'm not expecting miles of clearance. If I remember, I had maybe 2-3 mil actually on this phase 2-3 shell with the phase 1 bumper, phase 1 front bumper. I'm hoping maybe I can improve that clearance to 5-10 mil at a push, but I might be asking too much of it. I mean, as long as it isn't touching, I'll be pretty happy, so I'll start cracking on again. Okay, so just a quick one here. I've just clearanced the chassis leg on this side, ready for the boost pipe. So when we talk about clearancing, as you can see, standard phase 1 rad, it's got the expansion bottle on the side. We can't get a boost pipe down this side. Now, if it was a phase 2-3 rad, they still finish here anyway, which pretty much writes off this side. Now, easiest way is both boost pipes to come in from that side of the radiator, but you do have to clearance it. So looking over the top, we can see there is basically an extra 20mm lip of metal there on the chassis leg. Now, the easiest way to clearance it is to literally come down here, you put a small slice in there with the angle grinder, you straighten this top fold out slightly so it has got a little bit of a kink on it, and you straighten this lip out, and then you use a couple of blocks of wood, fucking big hammer, and you just knock it down flat. So we'll ignore this little hack job here. That is to obviously clear the toe and eye bolt. Please ignore that rust hole in the toe and eye. I do need to weld that up at some point, but you get the picture. That then gives you the clearance you need to run your boost pipe through. Now, factory boost pipe sizing is 2¼ inch. So I would say you could possibly fit 2½ inch in there if you wanted to be greedy. But if you're going to go 2.5 inch, I would say you need to be all metal coming round to the front. The other thing to note as well, I like to run a twin pass intercooler. So a twin pass basically means both entrances and exit on the same side. I see a lot of people run a single pass, which means straight through, and then they have a pipe back on themselves. To me, that's lost coolant efficiency, because that leg back on itself, if it was in a twin pass intercooler, when it's coming back on itself, it's still cooling through that secondary pass. Whereas if you just have another pipe over the top, it's wasted efficiency. The other thing to note on that is a lot of people turn around and they say they don't like twin pass intercoolers because how is the air supposed to do 180-degree turn on itself in the intercooler? Of course, in the intercooler itself, it probably is a lot sharper than if you used a nice little U-bend pipe on a single pass. But when you start looking at how you have to make the boost pipes on these, so I'll flip the camera, you can already see you have to start jamming 90s in anyway. So if you've got to talk about flow disruption and stuff like that, just remember it would have been a top mount intercooler anyway. So we've already approved the efficiency just by going front mount. So new one to me, ignore the white stuff, because apparently there's an ice cream man on the industrial estate now. But yeah, anyway, we'll get that in the mustache a bit more. As you can see, intercooler's now going in, so just restoring some sanity. Owning a Peugeot will do this to you. Probably should get back to work. Right, so now I've finished. Now I've finished eating that oily ice cream. Got the front mount in, kind of mounted. So all I've done is just drilled the radiator panel. Can't remember what it's called now. Riv nutted it. Riv nut tool down there somewhere. It's over there. And yeah, just bolted it straight in. So I've test fitted that with the radiator. That gives minimal clearance between the radiator and the intercooler. Of course, there is a fan on there as well, but it's basically nearly all kissing itself. So that should then give me maximum clearance in between here and the bumper. But now it's just a case of running around the car. I just got to jack it up. I've got to go underneath and start plumbing everything back up. Drive shafts potentially in a minute. I might leave the drive shafts out for first start up, but we are now getting closer to that first start up. Right, I think that's everything now hooked back up. At the moment we've got Bluetooth drive shafts in. Obviously got no intercooler setup, no air filter, no radiator, but I want to see if she'll start and if this pump will actually do a thing. So, I guess there's no time like the present. I'll rig the camera up again. Okay, so that's a mint start. Battery is dead. Okay, so take two. Got the Nocco jump pack on there. Okay, so either she's very, very flat, or I've forgotten to put an earth on somewhere. Let's fuck around and find out. Okay, so of course on a first start, it obviously helps to put your live cable on. So, let's try it again. Get a bit more weasel up. We'll try and do this without priming the injectors. Saying that, just something else I want to quickly do. Sounds stupid, but there's no oil breather on her at the moment, and it'll cough over a nice clean engine. So let's just dump that down there somewhere to the floor. Let's take that connection off before it gets covered in oil. Okay, so we'll try again. Something's getting hot. Right, so I've not hooked the throttle cable up yet, so I'll quickly hook that up and then we'll give her some pedal as well. Right, so cable's hooked back up. Try this again. Okay, so she runs to some fashion. She's idling quite high. I appear to have lost my RPM gauge, so I've got to work that out whether that's damaged wiring up here. I did actually have to send her out and clean it, which is a little bit frustrating, but that's something what I can look at a little bit further down the line or now. She's idling quite high, so you can hear that off by ear. She's probably at about 1,000. So yeah, need to bring that fuel down, bring that idle down a little bit. Right, so I can't remember where the last clip left off, so I'll quickly run you through what I'm doing at the moment. So intercooler's now bolted in. I know I've now got minimal clearance between that and the radiator, which is exactly what I wanted. Mocked all the boost pipes back in. Realised I've got, it's not going to brighten up, something like that. Realised I've got no clearance on the plug here, so I will have to free that off the pump, and this plug will possibly have to float about now. Now looking at putting my boost reference line in. So I know a lot of people drill and tap the manifolds, but I don't really like that. To me, that's a little bit sloppy. So what I've got is an MPT fitting. I can't remember what these are actually for now. I think it's for exhaust. But what I've done is mark the dot on there. That is where I'm going to drill. And then I will weld this straight into the boost pipe. So that should come off there nicely like that. And then if you work with pneumatics or in the food industry, you might recognise Festo air fittings. So I'm literally doing it all on push fit 6mm lines, exactly the same as how the manual boost controller is as well. So I just think that looks a hell of a lot neater. Afterwards, right, so I've got my oil breather with the, I think this is called a PCV valve, which needs to either dump to the floor, which I do not like that way. It's unclean, unsanitary, we're not doing that. So what I propose to do is, wherever the fitting is, got myself a nice little stainless fitting, I'll slice that in half, and that will get welded in here somewhere, so it returns it back to the induction exactly how it would be on a factory car. So yeah, a couple of reasons for doing that and not dumping it to the floor. One, I don't like dumping it to the floor because I believe it's unclean. The other thing as well, with induction, of course, this part of the induction is put under vacuum, so it's a sucking force to the turbo. So thinking about it, oil breather, sucking force, how it would be from OEM, it will actually pull a lot of the additional crankcase oil pressure out. So all that vapour building up, all that pressure in there, it just helps to alleviate it and suck it away from the bottom end. Right, so I've just very quickly drilled a hole straight in there, just using nothing more than cheap little step drill. So my fitting now plop straight in, and then I've just got to weld it all the way around. So I will end up back purging this just to make sure that nothing can break off the back of the weld and go through the turbo. Right, so engine is almost buttoned up now. So I've just finished the welding bits what I needed to do. So I've got the bracketry in here straight down to the bottom of the battery box tray. That's literally just to support this cone filter so it don't flop around like a dick. I've also got the nipple in there what I've welded, so I've got my oil breather returning into the induction as it should do, PCV valve in there, just a straight bit of silicone and then joiner in the middle. I was hoping to do something a bit nicer than that, but unfortunately that is the best I can do. And then of course the 1/8 MPT nipple welded in there. So I've got my boost reference going back to the fuel pump now. Right, so I didn't actually realise until I flipped the camera on myself, I've got oil all around my eye and stuff, so I look like I've got guy liner on. Nice. But anyway, right, back to this thing. So I've pretty much run out of time for tonight. I'm not going to film in the morning when I start finishing these bits off. I just need to crack it out before I've got the guy coming over to machine polish her up. So what's actually left on the list to do, I've still got 2 drive shafts to put in, then got to do the gearbox fluid once that's topped up. So I just swapping hands there. What else? Can't remember now. Auxiliary belt. I've got the 2 wings to put back on, which they've got to go on ready for him again to machine polish. Then I've got the slam panel, and there's a few other bits and pieces to tie up. So it's probably going to be an early start for me, and I'm going to have my work cut out on this one. But it's one of them. I've got tight deadlines to meet, and the only way is plough on. But anyway, for me, that is it for this episode. Don't actually know where we'll be at with this when I next film again. So anyway, cheers for watching, guys. Give us a like and subscribe if you won't mind, and I will catch you next time when hopefully we've got some more footage of this.